new charges filed today against accused Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann. They include the murder of a fourth victim found not far from the other three women he is already charged with killing. CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff is live in Riverhead, where the indictment was unsealed. Carolyn.
Cindy, the accused serial killer, his hands shackled behind his hulking back, showed no emotion at all. He was stone-faced as the district attorney announced that he was being formally indicted for the murder of a fourth victim. As the family members of that victim, Maureen Brainard-Barnes, sat in the courtroom looking on tearfully.
While the loss of my mom has been extremely painful for me, the indictment by the grand jury has brought hope for justice for my mom and my family.
It has been 16 years since the last time I saw my sister, 16 years since I heard her voice, because 16 years ago, she was silenced.
Long-awaited justice for the sister and daughter of Maureen Brainard-Barnes. When he was arrested in July, charged as the elusive Gilgo Beach serial killer, prosecutors said Rex Heuermann's DNA from discarded pizza and burner phone evidence tied him to three murdered women. Now add Maureen Brainard-Barnes to the list.
She was an intellectual. She was a writer. She was an artistic person. She cared very deeply about the people that she loved. It's been an honor and a privilege to work these cases and to provide that, small measure of closure.
The petite 25-year-old from Connecticut, a mother of two, was working as a Craigslist escort in Manhattan and disappeared in July 2007. Her remains found 3 years later near three other women's bodies dumped along desolate Ocean Parkway on Long Island. Police dubbed them the Gilgo Four, all sex workers wrapped in burlap. Now prosecutors say they were all murdered at different times by Heuermann.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the breaking news from today. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Hey, guys and girls, we got a lot to unwrap tonight. We're going to go over all the forensics. Ed, how you doing tonight? You're at an undisclosed location, and I'll be there soon. What's happening up over by you?
It's cold, it's snow, and it sucks.
Yeah, I hear you. It does suck. Those type of things. We got 2 years of a break from the snow, and we didn't get a break from the cold. But this is the first snow that we've had, significant snow in 2 years. Rex Heuermann upgraded charges, the fourth murder charge in the Gilgo 4 Long Island serial killer case. Finally, it took 6 months. He was arrested in July of 2023 and charged with 3 out of the 4. And today was the day. We anticipated it. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when it was coming. But we had an advance notice over the weekend that there was an impending court case. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it, Ed. It's all based on CSI evidence, the phone records, the cell data, but the hair and fibers, right up your alley, Ed.
That's right. I keep hearing the who are you? Who? The opening to CSI. Yes, folks, it was hair. Okay. And now they use it. Not only was it mitochondrial initially, now it's SNP DNA, full molecular cellular DNA profile, matching the wife, the daughter, the husband.
Yeah, and we heard about how they collected. We knew they got the pizza crust from Heuermann in the garbage in New York City outside of his architect business and outside of the office. But we heard that they collected a bottle of some type of energy drink that she discarded on the Long Island Railroad. So that was interesting and new information, but a lot of people were confused as they started speaking about this snippet test and the mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA and all of the science. The questions I saw in some of the chats during the course of the day were, quite a bit. There was quite a bit of controversy happening in some YouTube corners. So I wanted to grab you here tonight, and I know you're busy. You had a crazy day today, but I wanted to go over it. The attorney who represents Rex Heuermann, Michael Brown, said that he had some questioning about this nuclear DNA, and it wasn't available back in July. And as a defense attorney, they're always going to try to bring up doubt, right, as it pertains to their evidence. But he said at this press conference, this is a very short version of it, 2 minutes and 29 seconds. We'll let the audience listen to it. But hey, by a show of hands, I just want to say to everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, the replay viewers, and everybody that hangs out with us, the Mod Squad. You guys are great. But by a show of hands, how many people have been following this case, and how many had questions as it pertains to this DNA evidence with the hair and fibers and all the things that they were talking about? I know there's a lot, but Ed, again, there's a lot to explain about this, and it's not an easy process that just doesn't happen overnight, as people think.
No, and not all the labs are doing this. Most forensic labs, criminal forensic labs, are not doing that. So they have to go to a specialty lab to get the SNP DNA. Okay, well, you know, everybody should know, right? It stands for single nucleotide polymorphism, right? SNP, pronounced SNP DNA. So again, most criminal labs aren't doing that.
Right.
So in this case, they farmed it out, and bam. Because in the beginning, remember, the defense attorney was attacking the mitochondrial DNA.
Yes. Yeah, he was. And now today, as we're going to hear here, I'm going to play this little piece. It's only 2 minutes. So let's go right to this. And let's listen to what Rex Heuermann's defense attorney had to say right inside the hallway of the courthouse in Riverhead.
Top story developing right now. Alleged serial killer Rex Heuermann is facing some new charges. This is in the killing of a fourth woman on Long Island.
Yeah, her remains were found near Gilgo Beach, where the bodies of 3 other victims were also discovered. Jody Goldberg is live at the courthouse in Riverhead with the very latest. Jody, what's going on?
Chris and Bianca Heurmann was first arrested over the summer, charged in 3 of the murders, and he was a prime suspect in the 4th until now. This morning, he was indicted, and prosecutors are looking into all other possible ties. Stood silently before the judge. Gilgo Beach murder suspect Rex Heuermann now charged in the death of Maureen Brainard-Barnes. She and 3 others, known as the Gilgo Four, were the first of 10 sets of remains found buried and bound in burlap sacks along a stretch of Ocean Parkway more than a decade ago.
We know that it provides a small measure of closure for the families.
Brainard-Barnes' remains were bound with a belt embossed with initials that could match Heurmann's father. A special task force zeroed in on the now 60-year-old architect after finding a DNA match from a sample taken from pizza crust in the trash outside his Manhattan office. They had yet to establish a forensic match to Brainard-Barnes until now. As part of their investigation, they were able to get a DNA sample from a Monster Energy drink belonging to Heurmann's daughter. Bank statements also show Heurmann's then wife and children were out of town when Brainard-Barnes disappeared. They were also away when the other women went missing. Prosecutors allege this allowed Heurmann time to execute his plans for each victim without fear that his family would uncover or learn of his involvement.
The murders of all 4 victims occurred at times when the defendant's wife and children were traveling out of the state. We have said consistently since day one.
The circumstances of all the 4 women are very similar. Their backgrounds are similar. Unfortunately, their deaths are very similar. And that's why we focused on the Gilgo Four.
He has maintained his innocence from day one. He entered a not guilty plea on the original indictment, and he again entered a not guilty plea this morning.
So I wanted to play that, Ed, because it showed not only Rex Heuermann's defense attorney, and there was another one that I'm going to play a little bit later where he questions the DNA, but there was Asa Ellerup's attorney, Bob Macedonio, and she showed up to court again today, which was interesting. But before we get into all of these aspects, this has become sort of like a little bit of a freak show when it comes to Asa Ellerup showing up to court, because if we all remember in the beginning, Ed, she was like, we're shocked at this information. We didn't know anything was going on. And they were out of sight, out of mind. And now all of a sudden, because she signed those multi-million-dollar deals with Peacock and 50 Cent, she's now showing up to all the court appearances because it's content for them to to record, and she's there with her attorney, which to me just made things that made me go, But Ed,
did they bring the camera crew?
I didn't hear anything in regards to that, but I wouldn't doubt that there was somebody somehow recording her walking up and walking into that courthouse. They definitely wasn't to get that. Yeah.
Sickening.
It is about the victims and their families. Maureen Brainard-Barnes, we're a few steps closer to helping bring justice. There's much, much more to happen in the legal process, but at the end of the day, this is a step in the right direction. And we all, again, it's about the victims and their families. But Ed, let's jump into the DNA and the forensics and how it took them this long to get where they were. And could you explain to the audience why there was this delay with the SNP testing and why they didn't think they could get the nuclear, or why the DA was why the defense attorney for Rex Heuermann was confused about this?
Well, I don't understand the confusion by the defense attorney. He should know better. Okay, so they did the mitochondrial DNA, right? And then you could see that, I think personally, that they were hanging their hat on that mitochondrial DNA. And then the defense attorney started attacking the mitochondrial DNA. Now they're found out about familial DNA, snippet DNA, and that helped them with the identification of one of the other victims, not yet associated with the defendant here, but still she was identified because they were able to get her genetic material to our famous forensic lab in Texas, and they were able to get that match for Suffolk County. Now they said, okay, well, they're attacking mitochondrial DNA. Okay, let's go for the nuclear DNA. Let's see, the lab over there says they can do this. Let's send this to that lab and see if they can, obviously, because back in the day, you couldn't do that initially with hair. And as the great doctor Colleen came on the show and told
Patrick.
Yes, and she came on and she talked to all of us about how this occurs and now how they can get that nuclear DNA from hair. And boom, they said, okay, all right, they're going to attack the mitochondrial. Let's get the nuclear DNA from this hair. Boom, they sent it off to the lab, and the lab processes it and comes back. Home run.
Yeah, match. And this is a win for the prosecution, because all of this evidence combined with everything else that they have when it comes to all of his burner phones. I have a list of how many burner phones. I think it was 30 or 7 burner phones on 30 different accounts. And this guy was just going off on.
I didn't understand that about this press conference. If this press conference, was supposed to be about the indictment of this particular victim, but he brought up all the other victims and rehashed a lot of the evidence there. I get it now, because now they have nuclear DNA instead of just the mitochondrial on the hairs of the other victims. Okay, the hairs that were recovered from the other victims. I get that. But I thought this should have been more focused on this current victim. But I did love the fact that he gave the statistics of the DNA matches and how it's extraordinarily impossible for someone else to have that DNA. I mean, the numbers were mind-boggling. I mean, it was like what? 1 in 10 to the 64th power, could possibly match this DNA.
It was insane. It was insane. Yeah. The numbers he was throwing out. I wish I had it saved where we could find it, but I want to play a little bit from the press conference before, when you're done talking what you're saying, because I want to play 3 to 4 minutes of it. And I think we can capture that part, because he is a little wordy. He likes to talk.
But what lawyer doesn't?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's proud of the work that his task force did. And rightfully so, right? I mean, I would be tooting my own horn a little bit too, but he had the family there, and what was nice about it is that he didn't right away out of the gate say, acknowledge the family. He talked about the case, but at one point, I think in the 10-minute mark I have in my notes, he does bring the family to the forefront, which I thought was the right thing to do. He didn't do what Rodney Harrison did at the main big press conference. We saw Rodney Harrison, the chief of the former chief of the Suffolk County Police Department, actually the police commissioner, Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison turned around, addressed the families, and hugged each and every one of them. I mean, who here in the chat remembers that? That was a memorable moment because you don't often see a police commissioner step out and start hugging families, which I thought was just a class act by Commissioner Harrison, former Commissioner Harrison. But let's play a little bit. I see Mike King is in the chat. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Good to see you, buddy. So let's play a little bit of this. I'm pretty sure everybody has seen it, but I'll let some of it roll.
Sure. It's a little far from my face, but I in addition to those task force partners, we've also received assistance or receiving assistance from the United States Secret Service, which are helping us with the downloads of a lot of the smart devices, as well as the Nassau County Police Department, Pat Ryder, as well as the Nassau County District Attorney's Office. And their assistance has been invaluable as well. So we want to thank them. And most importantly of all, I think I want to thank and acknowledge the victims' family members, many of them who are here. I want to thank them for their continued support and advocacy, not only for their family members, but for victims everywhere. And I think it's important that we keep in mind what this case is about. Maureen Brainard-Barnes was 25 years of age when she lost her life. Melissa Barthelemy was 24. Megan Waterman was 22, and Amber Costello was 27. This is what this case is about. This is what this case should be about. And I'll confine my remarks about Maureen, but we could say the same thing about the other three women. Maureen was, she was an intellectual. She was a writer. She was an artistic person. She cared very deeply about the people that she loved. She fiercely protected them. She was a devoted sister, devoted mother, devoted daughter, and she's sorely missed by those that loved her. And I know I speak for the entire task force when I say it's been an honor and a privilege to work these cases. And to provide that, small measure of closure for the family members. And again, these are just allegations, and we'll continue to work the case. We look forward to proving the allegations in court. But again, this case is about those victims. So I just ask that we all keep that in mind.
And I think that is so important that the district attorney had brought that up at this press conference, because it was at the 10-minute mark, like I said, that he did that. And before that, I was kind of inside cringing because they were all in the background, as you see over his shoulder. These are all family members. And there's the famous attorney, Gloria Allred, who is now representing the family. So again, I thought this was important. And now he goes into, I think, Ed, what you were talking about, because he's halfway through this.
As I've said, we've charged the murder of Maureen Brainard-Barnes to add to the already charged murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The defendant is charged with murder in the second degree, not murder in the first degree, because for murder in the first degree, you have to commit 3 murders within a 24-month period, and the numbers just don't work out.
So, Ed, I wanted to explain this quickly to the audience, because a lot of people are confused. He's charged with murder in second degree for Maureen Brainard-Barnes, because she was the first of the 3. And as he just explained, you need to have certain things in place to charge that first-degree murder. And he's got first-degree murder on all of the additional victims. So this is not going to have any effect. He's never going to get out and never see the light of day upon conviction of even one of these charges. And there's the argument there that, people are like, oh, he should be charged, but he just spelled out why they couldn't charge him murder first degree. And for those of you who are maybe confused about it, just go back and listen at the 11-minute mark in this press conference, and you'll see exactly why they had to do it under the letter of the law.
Maureen was murdered in July of 2009. July of 2007. Melissa was murdered in July of 2009. Megan, June of 2010. And Amber in September of 2010. So that just the numbers didn't work out for murder in the first degree as to the Brainard-Barnes murder. So this indictment marks a change in the investigation. The grand jury investigation of the so-called Gilgo 4 is over. It has been concluded. And we will proceed with those cases in court. And again, we look forward to proving the allegations. But there should be no mistake. The work of the grand jury is continuing. Now we've talked about the transition from the grand jury to the prosecution. Well, with regard to those other bodies and those other murders, the grand jury, the task force will continue to investigate those cases. They'll be investigated through the grand jury, and when it is appropriate, and if we have anything to say, we'll say it at that time. But we're going to let that investigation play out.
So, Ed, did you catch what he said there? He earlier press conferences, 2 months ago, when he was pressed about this grand jury, if they were going to be done, when they were done with the Gilgo 4, they're going to be done. He said yes. And in this one, he said they're going to continue to stay in place for the remaining victims, which is exciting because that means now that they're done with the Gilgo 4, they're going to expand out to the other 7 victims that we have here, because there's a total of 11. So exciting, to say the least.
Before I turn it over for questions, I'll just talk about the bail letter. The bail letter discloses some further information on the case. Obviously, it's not all of the evidence in the case, but it does disclose some. So I'll synopsize that and open it up for questions at the end. With regard to the first part of the bail letter, it indicates that the task force has established that the defendant's family was out of state during Maureen Brainard-Barnes' murder, just as they were out of state during the murder of the other 3 victims. The family had checked into a hotel in Atlantic City in July 6th of 2007, and they remained there till approximately July 20th of 2007. And both the documentary evidence as well as witness statements have indicated that during the time of Maureen Brainard-Barnes' disappearance in on or about July 9th of 2007, Heurmann was not with his family. He joined them sometime thereafter. We also recovered 2 burner phones from the defendant at the time of his arrest. The phone ending in 1697 was recovered from his office, and the phone 2671 was recovered from his person. With regard to the phone ending in 1697, again, we see the same repetitive activity on that phone. It was used to contact numerous sex workers. We also were able to use it to identify an alias, Andrew Roberts, which was a known alias being used by the defendant. We were also able to recover a fraudulent email account, which is sandbagger303@gmail.com. The Sandbagger email address was used similar to the T-Hawk fraudulent account. The T-Hawk was used after Sandbagger, but the Sandbagger account was used once again to search for torture porn and info on the Gilgo case, on the Gilgo investigation, and victims' families. The defendant was particularly interested in the cellular telephone technology being not only used by the FBI, but specifically by the FBI in this case. We also recovered numerous electronic devices from the defendant, including a number of laptops, smartphones, tablets. From that, we learned that the defendant undertook numerous searches for software that could assist in erasing or wiping data from computer and digital devices such as Easy Hide IP and Shredder X. He used those two applications to destroy evidence in this case. We see that he continued to make prostitution-related searches before, during, and after the disappearance and murder of the 4 victims in this case. Notably, on one laptop that was recovered from the house, there was an attempt to shred evidence shortly before the defendant met with and murdered Melissa Barthelemy. Another laptop recovered in the house accessed Amber Costello's Backpage ad on September 1st, 2010 at approximately 9:03 p.m. And that is just hours before the ruse occurred around midnight on September 2nd. So the way the timeline works is on 9:03, that laptop that was recovered from the defendant's house was used to access Amber Costello's Backpage ad. Thereafter, at about 11:33, the burner phone that was used to kill Amber.
This is what you were talking about, Ed, how he was going through it all. And I want to fast forward it a little bit. Why do you think he did that, Ed? Why do you think he was laying it all out? Again, you think that was something part of what he just wanted to do, how he wanted to present it? He had the whole family sitting behind him there.
I think he showed a lot of his cards, to be quite honest with you. He, at least to me, it seems to be a very powerful case.
Yeah, it seems like a really, really strong forensic when it comes to the digital data, and also actually with all of the DNA from actually him and his family. Now, people still have questions about Asa Elrup and now the daughter. Her hair was wrapped around the skull of one of the victims. He goes on to say that here. And I too was surprised that he said that at this press conference. He talked about great detail, and I'm sure he warned the families before he did it. But he's got this guy, Rex Heuermann, is what the police commissioner, former police commissioner, Rodney Harrison said. He called him a pack rat. But I think what he was trying to say is that he's a hoarder because he kept all of his digital devices, as we heard the district attorney say, and kept them at that storage place, Acme Storage or whatever in Amityville. Remember, we saw the crime scene and the medical examiner's office out at that storage unit. Could we visit that just for a minute? Why would the medical examiner's office be at that storage unit? Why would they have responded there, Ed?
Because the investigators that went there saw something and realized they needed the expertise of somebody from the medical examiner's office. That's the only reason that would occur.
So do you think that there was, because we now know he was keeping all of his, like 30 plus cell phones, I think it says in this bail application, ridiculous amount of electronics and stuff. The house, we saw that basement was piled high to the ceiling with those white boxes. Remember, we were looking in the backyard. So maybe they found clothing from the victims. Folks, I'm going out.
I'm thinking more they might have found some bones or skeleton or something like that. And he is a hunter, so maybe he had some stuff in there that the regular detectives did not know whether it was animal or human.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because if it was clothing, you could package that up in paper bags and send it off to the lab. If it is the medical examiner, they come out for human remains. Correct?
Exactly. Right. Because the jurisdiction of the medical examiner is a body or human remains.
Interesting. Let's take a listen. I fast forwarded a little bit.
DNA profile on that was one exists. With regard to the second hair that was found,
I'm going to go back.
First hair that we 7.9 trillion times.
Right,
so a mother and a child will have identical population to.
Damn it. All right, here it is.
Three hairs at the site of Megan Waterman's burial. We found 2 female hairs and 1 male hair. The male hair was found at the bottom of the burlap that Megan Waterman was wrapped in, and the 2 female hairs were found around the head area, 1 at the top of the burlap and 1 near the tape that was used to restrain Megan Waterman's head. The 5th hair was a female hair that was found in the area of Amber Costello's head. Now, at the time of the original arraignment, we reported on mitochondrial DNA results for 3 of those hairs. With regard to the Megan Waterman hair that was found outside the head area, it was consistent with the genetic profile of both Asa, the mitochondrial DNA profile of both Asa and Victoria Heurmann, and you could exclude the rest of the population to 99.69% of the rest of the population. With regard to the one male hair of significance that was found on the burlap with Megan Waterman, again, that genetic result was consistent with the defendants, and 99.96 of the population could be excluded. And then finally, we had the mitochondrial results with regard to the female hair found at the Costello burial site, and that was consistent with the genetic profiles of both Asa and Victoria Heurmann, and that was to an exclusion of 99.98% of the rest of the population. And if you remember the science of mitochondrial DNA, unlike nuclear DNA, you inherit that solely from your mother. So a mother and a child will have identical mitochondrial DNA profiles. So that is the mitochondrial results. We now,
Ed, I want to talk to you about that, and I'm glad that you brought it up. A lot of numbers, big numbers. What does that tell you as far as forensics and this DNA goes for the audience, Ed?
It's strong. It's very, very strong. You know, we work in limited universes, right? Limited universes. So when he's saying that like 99.6% of the population can be excluded as the source, you know, I mean, so what you have left is what?
Yeah.
0.4% that, you know, could possibly, it's mind-boggling.
It certainly is. And when the reporters start asking questions, it's really hard to hear them, but the reporters start asking some decent questions, and he answers quite a bit of them. And I'm not going to, this is 47 minutes long with Gloria Allred as well speaking, but there was one point when a reporter asked a question, and it was at the 25-minute mark. And I'm not quite sure what she said, but it was something that piqued the interest of this female right here. Hold on, let me put her on the screen. And these are all family members, but this woman with the black sweater that's right behind Gloria with the white shirt that's coming through there. The reporter said something, and Ed, I don't know if you can, well, I'm going to play it, but she was irked by it, and she actually called her the B word. And I saw it in her, she lipped it. She worded it to someone if you're looking at the screen, to her right. So I'm going to let that play, and I want to try to hear. And if you guys can hear in the audience, if there's anybody who had listened to this with headphones, I'm listening to it right now for the first time with headphones, and maybe I'll be able to catch it. But let's let this play. I'm going to back it up to 25:05, but it happens at 25:22.
yes, the grand jury investigation with regard to Gilgo continues. Yes. Yes.
Okay, I think she said something about one of the family members because she's here right now. And that's when she looks over to her. Well, if we're looking at the screen, to her left, to our left, and to her right, and she's listening closely to what this reporter's saying, and she says it shortly after this.
Well, I think there are going to be a couple of words spoken by the members of the family after we're done with ours.
Look at it here.
Right here.
Yeah, she said bitch.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an average lip reader to understand what she just said.
Correct. And I'm going to play it again.
Investigation with regard to Gilgo continues. Yes. Yes. Well, I think there are going to be a couple of words spoken by the members of the family after we're done with ours. Right here.
she said it to that reporter. And I if someone could listen to that, and she was asking, the reporter was asking about, I think, one of the family members. Hold on, let me look at my notes. Not present. One of the family members was not present. And I think she was asking about her. So she definitely said, "What a bitch," or something like that.
She said, yeah, she definitely said the B word.
Yeah, and you could see the look of her on her face right here. She's looking at the person who she said it to, like, what in the actual F was going on there? But just little things that my little detective skill. When I was watching it in the office, I said, "Wait a minute, did she actually say that?" And I went back and looked at it, and as soon as I played it back, I was like, "Woo!" So whatever that reporter said, they didn't like. The family, one of the family members didn't like, and she was on TV doing that. So I'm not sure. I'll play it back one more time. Maybe somebody can catch it. If you're watching the replay, let Ed and I know what you heard, because I'm listening with headphones on and I still can't make out exactly what she said.
Because we want them to do their work. We've disclosed some of those reports, so the defense is aware of the names of those two. We just haven't disclosed it. And their work continues.
When you look at the grand jury that you were talking about, the investigation of the Gilgo police that has ended, is this same grand jury now going to be investigating the removal of the murder?
Yes, the grand jury investigation with regard to Gilgo continues. Yes. Yes.
So that's where he confirms that the grand jury for Gilgo 4 continues. And like I said a little bit earlier, I said he had said 2 months ago that when they were done with this, that they would be dismissed. And I guess that changed. So it's a good thing.
Would Melissa can because she's right here now, like.
Oh, wait, because she's right here now. So this reporter was asking about somebody, if she's going to answer something, because she's here right now.
Investigation with regard to Gilgo continues. Yes. Yes.
Would Melissa can because she's right here now, like to say.
Well, I think there are going to be a couple of words spoken by the members of the family after we're done with ours. Right here.
Can you put into context the layman's terms, the DNA, and how and why it could begin in the case against Mr.
All right. Well, we're going to move past that. But that was something that was interesting to me. Ed, again, this case got a lot of moving parts. And they talked about 8 terabytes. This was early on. 83,000 MP3 files, 1,250 full-length films, 13 years of evidence. I mean, my God, what else are we going to potentially hear about? They ripped that house apart for 14 days over in Massapequa Park. They went to that storage facility, and I believe they were there for over 24 hours with the crime scene unit and the medical examiner's office. What could we potentially be looking at here, Ed?
Well, they got all that electronic evidence, right? He kept those computers, he kept those cell phones. And again, folks, we see in another case, just like in the San Antonio case, the Secret Service was utilized to gather this information.
Yeah. When you're going to the Secret Service, you're looking for an extreme scrub of all of his devices. And there's so much. This guy was looking and searching for porn right up until they collared him. In July, they took this guy down because they were worried that he was going to kill somebody again.
Well, not only that, they were worried, everything that he was searching to, and he did utilize some of the things that he found to scrub the electronics.
Right. We heard about that for the first time today, that he engaged and purchased programs to scrub his devices, but he wasn't listen, we always count on criminals that are not dotting their I's and crossing their T's. We talk about it in almost every case that we cover. Every crime scene that we cover has somebody who leaves behind evidence. And the cards exchange principle comes into play here with the hairs and all the things that we find in the burlap that these victims were wrapped in. But at the end of the day, that's what CSI investigators bank on, is the mistakes.
I get accused of being anal. Could you imagine that? Me being accused of being anal? Okay. Well, I get paid to be anal, folks. That's the job of a crime scene investigator. Leave no stone unturned. Okay. All right. So, when they say, what is a good characteristic of a crime scene investigator? And then patience and being anal are definitely two of them.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a great guy waiting in the green room here. We can let him in.
I'm just waiting for him to give us the thumbs up because I didn't want to put him in there while he was checking the Hang Seng. He was checking the markets or something over there. So joining us tonight, and this was unplanned, and thank you for Mike for reaching out, is Mike King from Profiling Evil. So great to have you, Mike. Thank you for joining Ed and I.
Well, it's a pleasure. I love you guys. In fact, I join you every night. I'm just listening to you. So yeah, it's nice of you to invite me in.
Hey, love the fire, Mike.
Yeah.
It was so cold in northern Utah. I left this morning. It was 11 degrees and headed down. We have a place down by Las Vegas, and it was 55 degrees. So it's like heaven now.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
I thought you were setting up for a joke there. It was so cold. How cold was it?
Yeah. How cold was it?
Johnny Carson, right?
But Mike, it's always great to have you. And I want to throw you right into the hot seat here. I wanted to get your take on today's events. We knew this was coming. The district attorney, Ray Tierney, has been speaking about this for 6 months. He's been telling us there's going to be there's going to be the fourth piece. They're just needing to tie things up. I just wanted to go to you and your thoughts.
I mean, all three of us have been in these kinds of circumstances. And I guess the first thing I thought of, Ron, was that I really believe that the DA would have preferred to do them all at once, but something happened that caused them to make the arrest when they did. Something that made him nervous, whether it was that they really believed he was going to go out and hit another victim or whatever the case is. But I don't know that the DA could have ever got the publicity that he's gotten personally by being able to go through this case over and again. And today we saw it again. And you and Ed talked about it a little bit. One of the things that troubled me is why on earth lay your whole case out in a press conference and show pieces of your hand? Maybe because the hand's so strong he doesn't worry. I don't know, but it's always that arrogance that scares the wits out of me.
Yeah. Arrogance is a killer. Okay.
We've been talking about this throughout the whole entire case since July when Rex Heuermann was arrested. A lot of extended press conferences, extended talk by the district attorney. And I've been critical of that all along, because as we all know, holding stuff close to the vest and inside the courtroom is the place for some of these specific details to come out. And listen, maybe they have so much, is this treasure trove of evidence here? Maybe he has so much that he feels confident that he can release these little pieces, because when the former police commissioner came out and did a press conference with attorney John Ray, there was some kind of problems. There was trouble in paradise between the two of them. There was no question about that. And he was stating in his actual statement that he put out in, gentlemen, District Attorney Tierney said, we do not try the cases in press conferences. We try it in the courtroom. And correct me if I'm wrong. Mike, I got a chuckle out of you, but you witnessed that as well, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, politics is an ugly machine. I served as chief of staff to an attorney general, and some days I'd walk in just scratching my head and staring, and the AG would say, I didn't call you because I didn't want to know what you had to think about it.
Yeah, amazing. Ed, and I know you've been vocal in regards to that as well, in regards to too much, sometimes too much. You don't want to get that out there. And we always talk about these sources, police sources and so forth. And when we hear the talking heads on, say, News Nation and some of these other thoughts, we sometimes cringe because we know what happens down the line for a defense attorney.
Well, this is coming straight from the horse's mouth. He is the elected district attorney. It's not as if it's some ADA that's spewing this stuff. This is coming from the top dog. Yeah. Now, is he actually going to go into court and try this case? Or is he going to give this to a subordinate?
He's trying it, Ed, and he is vocal about it. He said, I am trying this case. So he is going to be in the courtroom trying it. And Mike, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do recall District Attorney Tierney stating that in a press conference. So, I don't know that I heard that, but I think number one, it'd be
foolish of him not to, because he's an elected official and he has to get out there, but go in as the second seat in the bench, because there's got to be somebody that's a lot stronger in what, is as close to a capital case as you can get. They may be choosing not to take this guy and put him on death row, but this is an important case with 4 victims, potentially more.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in New York, they threw out the death penalty many years ago.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's not even an option. But at the end,
but if they think if he thinks by doing this that he can get a plea out of Rex, I don't know. No. I don't think Rex's attorney is one to roll over for a plea.
Yeah. So, Mike, I know that you sent me the message, and thank goodness I do look at my phone periodically. So I saw it kind of late, and I know that you have a show coming up tonight. Will you be covering this tonight on Profiling Evil?
Yeah, I spent some time on Court TV today, and I talked about a lot of the things that you've already talked about. But it was interesting because as I was driving down, the back office says, "Hey, you need to stop somewhere and give us enough for a short on this." And I thought, well, what's there to say? And it was interesting, fellas, because as I was driving through central Utah in Millard County, there's a place where I worked on a serial killer case on a guy named Robert Ben Rhodes that some people believe may have let's see here. Looks like I lost my camera there for a second. You got me back?
You're back. You're back.
Ah, there we go.
Now we have look. It's camera 2, I think, Mike. It's a different look, but it's fine.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, good. Hopefully it got rid of some of the warts.
Go ahead. You were saying?
Anyway, so I'm driving along and I had this epiphany. So I did a little short that's going to come out tomorrow or the next day, whenever the back office gets it done. But basically, I stopped at the burial ground of a woman that we recovered many years ago. She was part of a serial killer case that some people believe the guy had as many as 300 victims by the time he was put in prison and this thing was wrapped up. But I stopped and it was 11 degrees outside, and I was shooting with the place where she was found over my shoulder. And I said, there's a couple of things we got to keep thinking about in these kinds of cases like Heurmann. And that is, it may be a serial killer case with the Gilgo 4, but it might be a serial location, Long Island, and that location that's influenced by tidal waters and other things that we've talked about for the 11 total bodies. And not necessarily we want to somehow apply them all to Heurmann and wipe our brow and say, thank goodness we solved the mystery. But I think there's more out there, and I don't know that they can all be tied to Heurmann. And then I thought, it's equally as much about where the killer hunts as it is about where the killer dumps. And where they put those bodies tells us so much about them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Excellent.
We do have the phrase dumping grounds,
Yeah,
okay, because we've had plenty of that here in New York. For instance, we had places in Staten Island, places in Brooklyn that at one point in time, they were just wild, overgrown fields, huge swaths of land that were just, muddy swampland. And then all of a sudden developers decided they wanted to build a shopping center in these locations. And as they were excavating to put foundations in, all of a sudden all these bones start popping up.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, we had it happen in Brooklyn, right there by Starrett City.
Yes, and we had it in Staten Island too. With Tommy Karate, the mafia hitman.
I worked patrol for 10 years in that area, and that was always a dumping ground. We would always find suitcases with body parts in there and so forth. And those high tumbleweeds grow. The weeds over there grow so high. And I remember ESU used to have to go in there and cut the stuff down, and a few times they actually did burns in there where they burned this stuff down.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
I had a case in there that we found a body in there that I ended up having to fly down to North Carolina and testify for the feds on this particular body.
Interesting.
Well, that's so cool to me, because we have this kind of mentality where we want to make this more than it is, and these killers, they want to be successful. Right. So when it's time to dispose of things and wash their hands and kind of get the do-over, they're going to take them somewhere where they're going to be successful. And what better place? I mean, if they put them in a dumpster in Brooklyn, chances are that body might get discovered. You put it in a marsh in a bag, weighted down, perhaps even chopped up. It's a lot harder to find them.
Exactly.
100%. Hey, Mike, do you have a couple more minutes, or are you pressed?
Yeah.
I wanted to just go to the chat. If you guys have any questions, hashtag DutyRon, hashtag Ed, hashtag Mike. Folks, if you're not yet subscribed here to Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we wish that you would consider subscribing. Also, Mike King, Profile in Evil, is one of a few channels that I do recommend. I have him in my recommended. I'll always recommend him. If you're not subscribed, he's doing great things over there. And, again, if you want to get all things true crime related, straight talk, Mike King at Profile in Evil, he's your guy. Ed and I, we just stick to the facts, and we give you our experience, what we know, what we did. We walk the walk and talk the talk, and this is what it's about. Mike, I wanted to just also quickly say thank you to you for your friendship over this course of these past 4 or 5 years. I know you started
crazy, isn't it? You were the first guy I reached out to in this whole crazy YouTube world, and you really gave me a lot of advice. And over the years, we've had the chance to talk back and forth and work through issues. Because, I got an interesting one coming up in a couple of days. Maybe Thursday night, I'm going to go live for a minute. One of my channel members, Ron, might even be one of yours, committed a homicide. And then after she committed the homicide, she called me from jail and wanted to talk about it. And of course, I got right with the investigators and turned the case over, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But this is kind of a wacky world, because we got all these amazing people on here that are in the chat that are 100% dialed in, and they're good, solid citizens. But there might be a couple of people out on the fringe in there too.
Right. And maybe have histories, because I get a lot of folks who talk to me about certain things and so forth. But let's go right to the chat. Debbie Carroll, a channel member, says hashtag Ed, hashtag Ron. Why no hairs from the son found? He lived in the house also. Debbie is referring to hairs from Asa Ellerup, hairs from Rex Heuermann, and now hairs from the daughter.
Well, it's hit or miss, guys. Hair is a trace transfer type evidence. It's a roll of the dice. The odds are that his hair is around there too, but they just never got it commingled with the evidence that was found.
Yeah. And I wanted to go to you, Mike, on your thoughts on that. Whoop.
No, I'm thinking the same thing. I mean, number one, their hair's probably longer, so the chance of it getting attached to tape or something else is maybe longer or better. Maybe they have something to do with laundry or cleaning or some reason to be in the area. I have no idea. But that's a really interesting question. One I got for you guys is, how significant is Heurmann's supposedly father's belt in this whole thing? And why on earth would this guy use his father's belt to wrap up the legs of a victim?
Yeah. He forgot the initials were engraved on the back of the belt.
Yeah. And I read a report, I think today in the New York Post, it was Heurmann's grandfather's belt, not even his father's. So I believe grandfather. So this is a generational item that might have been saved. And again, I go back to the pack rat. This sometimes is a generational thing. It's passed down from generation to generation. Your parents bring you up and they're, keeping stuff and hoarding stuff or having clutter. And it seems like his home, the inside, albeit we never got an inside look other than the photos that were shared by the attorneys for Asa Ellerup. We got a good look on the inside of the home, but they said that was the police that made it in disarray. But something tells me when we saw down into that basement, gentlemen, there was a lot of stuff inside that house. There was a lot of clutter, because Rodney Harrison, former police commissioner for Suffolk County, is a gentleman. That man is a gentleman, and he called him a pack rat, and he was being nice. So,
and hey, Ron, Ed, I also was wondering in that regard, just from a behavioral perspective, you kind of look at especially with serial predators, this evolution they go through. And most predators will get better at what they do as they make mistakes and kind of glump along. But sometimes they start to lose control and they go from this organized state to more disorganized, where maybe all of a sudden he didn't have the rope like he had on others, and he needed to get this thing bound up and get the body out of the house or whatever. But it could be some indication too of just the beginnings of disorganization, because there's got to be a reason why he went quiet, if he went quiet for so many years.
Yeah, usually though, Mike, they start off disorganized, and the more they do, they become more organized, right? And become more methodical and make less mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's true, Ed. I found that behaviorally in some of the suspects, but usually those kind of guys that start out disorganized get caught too quickly. It's the guy that starts out organized and is a serial predator that's pretty darn good at scrubbing the ground with the broom to get rid of his footsteps, that takes us a little longer to capture. But again, it boils down to, you're right, the sophistication of the offender.
And then a lot of it is too, as well, is that they get so full of themselves over time that they think they're untouchable, or they don't, and then they get sloppy and they make mistakes, right? Because they think they're smarter than everybody else.
And Ed, you made a mention several months ago that you talked about some of the earlier victims were dismembered. Remember, we were finding their remains scattered from all the way out, out east, all the way down into Gilgo, and then it sort of stopped. And they were finding again in 2010 these 4. We found full remains, full skeletal remains. And you talked about maybe it was too exhausting for him to dismember, and he just
that's a great point, Ron. And you have to think about that. If he is responsible for those earlier bodies, did it just become too much work, or did he realize, hey, I'm getting away with this, I don't need to work that hard?
Exactly. It's like somebody mentioned in the chat, Ted Bundy, right? He started off organized and then he became less organized. Well, that's because he was such a narcissist that, he felt, he escaped so many times, and everybody's a dummy. He's so smart, and that he could get away with this and get away with this. And then so he started making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look at the chat because it's going crazy. Everyone's in there. L Rose says, #DutyRon. Do you think possibly the DA is showing his hand as he's talking to the public? He knows others have knowledge, where it law enforcement or public, whether it's law enforcement or public. Would that be a way to get someone to trip up and get nervous? That's a great thought right there. And I personally don't think that is why he's doing that, because of the amount of evidence that they have collected. Again, I'll go back. 8 terabytes was turned over to Rex Heuermann's attorney months ago, and I'm sure that there's a ton more that's going to go over. 8 terabytes, 83,000 MP3s, 1,250 full-length feature films, and over 160,000 photographs. That's 13 years of evidence. So what they are looking at in that one exchange, which was 2.5, 3 months ago, there's now more, because now more evidence is going to be kept getting released to the defense attorney. And we heard him talk today. I mean, I had plans to play a clip from him, and I have Jesse Weber, who's on with News Nation, talks about this treasure trove and tons and mountains of evidence. I don't think that they're really fishing for additional information when it comes to investigating these other 7 victims. Yes. But what they have on this Gilgo 4 is astronomical amount of evidence. Ed, your thoughts?
No, I think they have a very strong case from what he just laid out in this press conference, between the cell phones, between the geofencing, the tracking of the movements in Massapequa, the Long Island Railroad, Manhattan. I think it's very, very, very strong case. But as you know, no case is a slam dunk, as many of us know, but very strong. I think very strong, and he knows it too, and he's getting cocky.
And Mike even went as far. He even went as far, and Ed too. He even went as far as keeping his victim's cell phones, accessing the voicemail and calling the victim's family. You know, it's just it's over the top what Rex Heuermann allegedly is accused to have done here. And there's so much more that we are going to hear about once this trial commences. And you know, Suffolk County is not known for bringing forth cases in a very quick fashion. Look at the case of Thomas Valva, the little boy who was frozen in his garage. His father, a New York City transit police officer, Michael Valva. It took them, due to COVID too, I'm going to give 2020 some excuse for Suffolk County, but it took them over 3 years to bring that case forward. And we were following that case closely, and they just resolved it in 2023. Mike, your thoughts on that, the cell phone and the taunting of the families?
Yeah, I mean, that just extends the seriousness of this kind of a predator. It made me think of, if you remember, Robert Ben Rhodes, who was a truck driver, serial killer. And on one little victim that he killed, a little 14-year-old girl named Regina Walters, he actually had her home phone number and ended up, after he had murdered her, calling her father and saying, "Hey, I understand you're missing a little girl." And the guy's like, "What do you know about this?" And he just kind of laughs and says, "You might look in a barn," which is where he then murdered and left this child in a displayed fashion. And these predators get a sense of power and control out of it. They relive the experience vicariously, and it's absolutely disgusting, and just tells you again how evil people are that are out there. There are people that make mistakes, and then there are people that are evil.
Right, and I think some of the facts of this suggest that those cell phones were his trophies, and he did use them to relive the fantasy of what he had done, and to cause additional pain to that victim's family.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got off on it. Let's be honest.
And Mike, I really appreciate, because I say this quite a bit, evil does walk amongst us. And, you know, your channel is Profiling Evil, right? But it is true. We always have to, as Ed says, keep your head on a swivel, make sure you're aware of your surroundings and know what's going on around you. And if you see something, say something. You know, we look at all these cases, and Rex Heuermann seemed to have just been able to blend in with society undetected. And we hear from some of the escorts that he dated on various outlets where he was throwing out vibes to him, but they just didn't say anything because of the profession. They're afraid to talk to the police. They're afraid to come to us and say, "Hey, something's up with this guy," because they're afraid they're going to get locked up. So it's a tough situation. But again, you know, there's so many opportunities, and there's so many things that, you know, people just keep quiet about that could potentially help. But we're at the hour mark, so I want to wrap this up. Mike, thank you for being here. Ed and I are going to
thank you. Gosh, what a kind thing to let me in.
Yeah, Mike, anytime. And you know, I just wish I had a little bit more time to plan it, because then I'd have a little bit more structure to this thing. But we do it. We just make it happen. We wing it, and it's all good. You're part of the family, part of the brotherhood, and you're always—
Well, you know, you're always welcome on mine as well. I know it's late for you boys out on the East Coast, but
And Ed's traveling. He's teaching. So Ed's, I'm going to meet him tomorrow night. So I'm going to do some, I'm going to film him giving his, doing a course. He's doing some training. So,
that'd be very cool.
Yeah. I'm going to go on a date and visit with Ed, and stay at the hotel where he is now, and film a little bit, and, you know, put up a little content for our folks. So,
you know, just one last thought before Mike leaves, because of Profiling Evil. It always sticks in my head. The greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Amen. Holy cow.
Leave it up
to Reverend Ed Wallace.
Yes. Amen to that, Ed. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. There goes Mike from Profiling Evil.
Thanks, fellas.
Subscribe to Profiling Evil, and I will put a link in the chat. There he goes. Ed, it was an hour of interesting conversation. Rex Heuermann charged with the fourth, Maureen Brainard-Barnes, her family. I always say this every time we talk about these cases, and it doesn't matter what case we cover. It's about the victims and their families, because, ladies and gentlemen, the families are the ones who are left behind to live the rest of their life out with maybe, perhaps, no answers to what happened to their loved ones. Today, Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Gilgo Beach Task Force, they brought forth these charges, and it gives that, you saw that family. They all had grief on their face, stress, but a sense of relief, because now they know who did this to their loved one. And that's so important. That's so important, folks. Ed, I wanted to go to you for the final thoughts, because I did have another piece, but I know you got to get to bed, and we got a long day ahead of us tomorrow and Thursday.
Yes, sir. Folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for spreading the word about our channel here. Thanks for growing our family. But most of all, I want you always to be safe, be prepared, and watch your six.
Yeah, and as Ed said, I want to thank you guys for subscribing here to Crime Time with DutyRon. We're quickly approaching 220,000 subscribers, and it's because of you great folks who follow us and share us. So make sure you share these live streams out onto your social media platform. Tell your friends, your family about Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. And yes, you can get this shirt, Crime Time with DutyRon, and then there's one that says with Ed Wallace. Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. There's a couple of different versions. You can go over to our merch store, and it's down below here in the shelf. You can get it. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video. And again, I want to send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to the victims of this horrific murderer, alleged murderer, Rex Heuermann. There's 7 more sets of remains that need closure. Their families need to know what happened to their loved ones. So there's a lot of work to be done still, but let's send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to all victims of crime and their families across the globe. I want to say thank you to our replay viewers, our channel members, our moderators, and everybody that's civil in the chat. If you have questions for Ed and I, leave it down below in the comment section, and we will see you on the next crime scene we cover. Good night from New York and somewhere upstate New York. Peace and love from Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed. Thank you for joining.